Okay, let's unpack this. 6,080.
That is a staggering number.
It really is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of those numbers that doesn't quite compute in your head.
Not at all.
We are talking about the number of episodes hosted by the subject of today's deep dive. Just to put that in perspective for you, if you watched one episode a day, it would take you over 16 years to get through them all.
16 years. That's a whole childhood.
Exactly. That is more hours behind a desk than his own mentor, the legendary Johnny Carson. We are talking about a career that spans 33 years in late night alone.
And that's not even counting the other stuff, right? The morning shows, the guest spots, or, this whole new streaming era he's in now.
Not at all.
It's a volume of work that is almost impossible to comprehend in the modern media landscape. Where a full season of a show is 8 episodes, and then you wait 2 years for the next one.
The different universe.
Yeah.
So today, we're diving deep into the life and career of David Letterman. But we're just talking about the guy with the gap-toothed grin who threw watermelons off a roof.
Although we will definitely be talking about that.
Oh, we have to. But we're also talking about a failed weatherman, a race car team owner, and the man who essentially reinvented the entire talk show format by completely deconstructing it.
It's such a fascinating trajectory. You have this irreverent outsider who spent decades mocking the very medium he was working in, who somehow, evolved into a bearded sage of long-form interviews.
Like the bearded sage. It's perfect.
It's a journey from pure acidic irony to this kind of startling sincerity.
And trust me, the road to becoming that bearded sage was paved with some absolutely wild stories. We've got hailstones the size of canned hams, a feud with Oprah, and a blackmail plot that sounds like it was ripped from a noir crime novel.
What stands out to me in the research is how the source material really highlights the why behind all of that chaos. It wasn't just randomness for the sake of it. It was a specific comedic philosophy that genuinely changed how we consume television.
So let's go back to where it all started, the heartland.
Indianapolis, Indiana.
Indianapolis. Broad Ripple, specifically. David Michael Letterman, born April 12, 1947.
Right.
And looking at his early life, you can see the seeds of his personality right away. His father, Harry, was a florist, and his mom, Dorothy, was a church secretary. And we all know Dorothy from her appearances on the show later in life.
She became a huge star in her own right, the Olympic correspondent.
A national treasure.
Yeah.
But his relationship with his father was, well, it was more complicated, right?
It was defined by this deep admiration, but also this deep anxiety. Letterman told Esquire once that he really admired his father's ability to be the life of the party, to tell jokes. Harry was the guy who could walk into a room and just light it up.
The funny one.
The funny one, yeah. But there was a shadow hanging over the family. His father had a heart attack at just 36 years old when David was still a young boy.
That is incredibly young. Imagine being a kid and knowing your dad could just vanish.
It creates a sense of fragility, a constant low-level hum of dread. And that fear of losing his father, it really haunted Letterman growing up. And tragically, that fear was realized. His father died of a second heart attack in 1973. He was only 57.
Wow. Which gives a lot of context to Letterman's own health scares later, and it maybe explains that underlying current of neuroticism or anxiety that fueled so much of his comedy.
I think so.
He wasn't just chill. He was always kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop.
Exactly. But before the tragedy, there was the C student. This is a huge part of his identity. He leans into it.
A self-described average student, which I love. He actually wanted to go to Indiana University, but his grades just weren't good enough. So he went to Ball State University in Muncie instead.
Which he never let anyone forget. He turned it into a running gag for decades. But he also put his money where his mouth is. He later endowed a scholarship at Ball State specifically for C students.
I love that so much. The official name was something like the Letterman Telecommunications Scholarship for Average Students.
Average students need money, too. It's so on brand.
Totally. But even back then, he was already pushing buttons. He started his broadcasting career at the college radio station, WBST, and he got fired. Do you know why?
This is the perfect foreshadowing for his entire career. It's the origin story in a nutshell.
It really is.
He was fired for treating classical music with irreverence.
He just couldn't help himself. You're supposed to be all serious and somber with the classics, introducing Bach with this, hushed reverence in your voice.
And Dave is in there probably making jokes about Beethoven's hair or something.
Right. It shows that even then, he couldn't take the seriousness of broadcasting seriously. He had this innate, compulsive desire to puncture the balloon of pretension, and that attitude followed him straight to his first real gig.
The weatherman.
This is the era I find most charming, I think. He's working at WLWI in Indianapolis. It later became WTHR. And he's not just reporting the weather. He's doing a bit. He's turning the nightly forecast into, like, performance art.
Oh, the bits were legendary. He once congratulated a tropical storm for being upgraded to a hurricane.
Which is just a terrible thing to celebrate. People's roofs are blowing off.
Yeah.
He's on TV acting like the storm got a promotion at work.
But it's undeniably funny in a very dark way. It highlights the absurdity of the whole news cycle, you know? The dramatic music, the graphics.
And then there was the hail, the famous hail prediction.
He predicted hailstones the size of canned hams.
Just a completely surreal image. Golf ball sized is the cliche. Everyone says that.
All right, but canned ham-sized is specific, it's heavy, it's ridiculous. It forces the viewer to visualize this chunk of processed meat falling out of the sky and denting their car.
My favorite, though, has to be the map incident. This one is pure genius. There was a satellite map that accidentally omitted the border between Indiana and Ohio. Just a glitch in the graphics.
Which would happen. Most weathermen would just ignore it or make a quick apology.
Right. Sorry about the map, folks. Moving on. But what does Dave do?
He creates a conspiracy, a whole narrative on the spot. He claimed the higher-ups had removed the border due to dirty political dealings, making it one giant superstate.
He even took a side. He said, personally, I'm against it. I don't know what to do about it.
It's just seeing the absurdity in the mundane. That right there, that's the Letterman DNA. He's looking at the camera and he's basically saying, we all know this is just a TV show, right? So let's have some fun with it.
But eventually, the Midwest couldn't contain him. In 1975, he and his wife at the time, Michelle, they pack up a pickup truck and head west.
To Los Angeles.
And here's a fun detail I found in the research.
Yeah.
As of 2012, Letterman still owned that pickup truck.
No way.
Yeah. That's some serious sentimental value. It's like an artifact of his escape.
I'm a museum piece.
So he gets to L.A., and he starts doing stand-up at the Comedy Store. And he falls into this incredible group of writers.
It really was a golden generation. Jimmy Walker from the show Good Times, who was huge at the time with his dynamite catchphrase, hired a team to write jokes for his stand-up act.
He was a superstar.
A mega star. And Letterman was in that writer's room, and look at who he was working alongside, Jay Leno and Louis Anderson.
Imagine being a fly on the wall in that room.
Yeah.
Just future legends trying to out-funny each other for Jimmy Walker.
It gave him his footing, though. He started getting TV gigs, writing for variety shows. He was appearing on game shows like The Gong Show and Password Plus.
Right.
He even screen tested for the lead role in the movie Airplane.
Wait, really? I didn't know that. Letterman is the lead in Airplane. That role went to Robert Hayes, right?
It did, but you can see why they considered him. The main character, Ted Stryker, he's nervous, he's sweaty, he's totally deadpan.
That is Letterman to a T.
It really is. He didn't get the part, but his real break came from The Tonight Show. The scouts saw his dry, sarcastic humor, and they booked him. He became a regular guest host for Johnny Carson starting in 1978.
And Carson was the king. Letterman has always credited Carson as his biggest influence.
Yeah.
But NBC, they had a different idea for Dave initially. They looked at this sarcastic, gap-toothed comic and thought,
You know what? Let's put him on in the morning.
The David Letterman Show, debuting in June 1980.
At 10 a.m.
And this is where it gets really interesting for me. This show was, by all accounts, a disaster, right?
Well, yes and no. It's complicated critically. It was a huge success. It won 2 Emmy Awards. The writing was incredibly sharp.
But in terms of ratings.
A catastrophe. An absolute ratings disaster. It lasted only a few months.
Because he was doing late-night humor for people who were, just drinking their morning coffee and trying to get their kids ready for school.
Exactly. The morning audience wants comfort. They want a casserole recipe and a weather update. Letterman gave them a cameraman running door-to-door annoying neighbors and a segment called A Salute to Gracious Living, which was anything but.
They weren't ready for that level of irony at 10 a.m.
Not at all. But it did something really important. It established a cult following. It proved that while he might not be for everyone, the people who liked him really liked him.
It was the college kids, the comedy nerds, the people who wanted something different from TV.
So NBC decides to lean into that demographic. They don't fire him. They keep him on the payroll. And in 1982, they launched Late Night with David Letterman at 12:30 a.m. right after Carson.
And this is the moment. This is when the format changes forever. The 12:30 slot gave him permission to be edgier, weirder. It became a destination for college students and night owls.
It was the found comedy era. He wasn't relying on polished skits written in a sterile room. He was using the building itself, the people who worked there, the city.
The bits they came up with were just delightfully stupid, stupid pet tricks, which actually started on the morning show, but it found its true home here.
So simple, yet so effective. It wasn't about a dog jumping through a flaming hoop. It was about a dog that would only chase its tail if you played a specific song. It was the antithesis of show business.
It was anti-showbiz, that's a perfect way to put it, and stupid human tricks too. But then they got physical. They started throwing things off a 5-story building just to see them smash on the pavement below.
Watermelons, televisions, bowling balls, bottles of salad dressing. It was visceral. It was taking the television medium, which is usually so polished and expensive, and just breaking things.
It appeals to the lizard brain. What happens if we drop a TV? Smash. Cool.
And the suits. You can't talk about this era without talking about the suits.
He wore a suit made of Velcro and jumped onto a Velcro wall. He wore a suit made of Alka-Seltzer and got lowered into a giant tank of water.
That Alka-Seltzer suit is a prime example of his comedy. It's scientific curiosity mixed with slapstick. He's in this tank, the suit is fizzing away, he's looking completely miserable, but he is committed to the bit.
Totally committed. But beyond the props and the stunts, he was also changing how interviews were done. He was not the polite host who just, sets up the guest for a plug. He could be, well, dangerous.
Acerbic is the word that's often used. If a guest was boring, he looked bored. If a guest was pompous, he'd prick the balloon. There was no faking it.
I'm thinking of Cher. That is the moment people always point to.
Oh, the Cher interview. It's iconic. She had refused to do the show for years. She finally came on in 1986, and he asked her, why'd you stay away for so long?
And she just, without missing a beat, says, because I thought you were an asshole.
Live on air. And the audience just cheered. They went wild.
Because it was true, in a way. He was prickly. But that tension made for incredible television. You couldn't look away because you genuinely did not know what was going to happen next.
And then you have the Andy Kaufman incident.
Oh, that was on another level of chaos.
Right, with the professional wrestler Jerry the King Lawler. They had this whole feud going, and Lawler slapped Kaufman right out of his chair live on the show.
It looked incredibly real. I remember seeing clips of that as a kid and being terrified. Kaufman is stumbling around. He's shouting this string of profanities that they can't bleep fast enough.
It was later revealed to be staged. Bob Zmuda, Kaufman's writing partner, confirmed that. But at the time, it felt like live TV had completely gone off the rails.
And Letterman thrived in that. He didn't cut to commercial immediately. He just sat there, eyes wide, narrating the disaster as it unfolded. He was the ringmaster of the circus.
He even took the chaos outside the studio. He used a bullhorn to interrupt the Today Show, which was filming in the same building.
He leaned out a window claiming he was the president of NBC News, and he wasn't wearing any pants.
He was breaking the fourth wall before most people even knew there was a wall to break. He was trolling his own network. But this bad boy image, this sort of rebellious streak, would eventually clash with the corporate realities of network television.
Which brings us to the late night wars. The big one. The moment that really defined 90s television.
Absolutely.
So Johnny Carson announces his retirement in 1992. Everyone, including Johnny himself, thinks Dave is the heir apparent. He's the guy.
It was the logical choice, but the NBC executives were worried. They looked at the guy in the Velcro suit, the guy who's insulting guests and throwing things off roofs, and they thought, is this America's host? Can this guy handle 11:30 p.m.?
They saw him as too niche, too weird.
They thought he was too unpredictable. They went with the safe choice, Jay Leno.
That had to hurt. I mean, this was the job he had been working toward his entire career. Carson's desk.
It was a massive public blow. But here's a fascinating detail from the sources that shows where Carson's loyalties really were. Even though NBC picked Leno, Carson himself signaled his allegiance. He kept sending jokes to Letterman.
During Dave's later years at CBS.
Exactly. He never appeared on Leno's show, but he was secretly feeding material to Letterman.
That is a huge endorsement. It's like the king passing the crown in secret.
It was clandestine. Carson would fax jokes to Dave's office. Dave would read them in his monologue, and if you knew what to look for, you'd see Dave do a little pantomime of a golf swing after the joke.
Johnny's golf swing.
Exactly. It was their secret signal to Carson, who was watching at home. I got your joke, and I did your joke. It was their private communication channel.
That's incredible. So, spurned by NBC, Letterman makes the jump. He moves to CBS to launch The Late Show with David Letterman, and the deal was massive.
It was huge, a $13 million a year contract, which doubled his NBC salary. And CBS also spent $8 million renovating the historic Ed Sullivan Theater.
The theater where the Beatles played, it had history, it had gravitas.
It really gave the show a sense of grandeur that 30 Rock just didn't have. But there was a catch. NBC claimed they owned the intellectual property of his bits.
Right. They said, you can't take the top 10 list. We own that concept.
Which is absurd when you think about it. How do you own a list of 10 things? It was pure corporate pettiness.
But Letterman sidestepped it with pure snark.
That's all he had to do. The top 10 list became the Late Show Top 10. Viewer mail became the CBS mailbag. They changed the names just enough to mock the lawyers.
Take that, legal team. It was brilliant.
And it worked. Initially, Letterman was crushing Leno in the ratings. He was the undisputed king of late night for a brief, shining moment. The cool kids had finally taken over the main stage.
But then, 1995 happened. A really pivotal year. The turning point.
The Hugh Grant interview on Leno. This is a crucial moment in TV history. Hugh Grant had just been arrested for soliciting a prostitute in L.A. A massive, massive scandal.
It was everywhere.
And he went on Leno's show for his first public appearance. Leno asked him very simply, "What the hell were you thinking?"
It was the perfect question. It's what everyone at home was thinking.
The ratings just skyrocketed. Leno proved he could handle that big tabloid moment with a kind of everyman charm. And honestly, Leno pretty much stayed on top after that. He consistently won the ratings war until Conan O'Brien took over very briefly.
But Letterman had his own big stumble in 1995. He hosted the Oscars.
Oh boy. The Oprah? Oprah bit.
It fell so flat,
Oh.
so hard,
Yeah.
you could hear the crickets in the Dolby Theater.
Critics felt his irreverence just completely undermined the glamour of the Academy Awards. The Oscars are like a church for Hollywood. They take themselves so seriously.
And Letterman was trying to bring that late-night irony to the most sincere, self-congratulatory room in the world, and the room just rejected it.
But true to form, he turned that failure into a long-running gag on his own show.
That was his resilience, right? If he bombed, he made the bombing the joke. He spent weeks making fun of his own performance.
He owned his failures better than anyone.
Now, we usually think of Dave as this Teflon figure, shielded by irony and sarcasm. But there were moments where that armor really cracked.
Absolutely. And the most significant one was in January of 2000. He went in for a routine checkup, and they found a severely obstructed artery. He was rushed into emergency quintuple bypass surgery.
Quintuple. That's serious. That's 5 bypasses.
It is life-threatening. He was off the air for weeks. And when he returned on February 21st, 2000, the tone of the show was completely different. It was deeply personal.
He brought his doctors and nurses out on stage. He introduced them one by one.
He did. He was almost in tears. For a guy who never, ever showed genuine emotion, this was shocking. He had faced his own mortality, the very thing he'd feared since his father's first heart attack.
And he brought out a band that would become inextricably linked to him from that night on, the Foo Fighters.
They played Everlong.
He introduced them by saying, "My favorite band, playing my favorite song." It became this anthem of his recovery. It marked the start of a really deep friendship.
But of course, he couldn't resist a joke even then.
Of course not. He started lobbying the state of Indiana to rename the highway circling Indianapolis the David Letterman bypass.
Humor as a defense mechanism, even in the face of death. But the vulnerability wasn't always about health. In 2009, things got much, much darker.
The extortion plot. This story is just wild. It feels like something out of a movie. So on October 1st, 2009, Letterman sits at his desk and tells the audience he's being blackmailed.
On the show, he just lays it all out there. He reveals that someone left a package in his car. The package contained materials proving that Letterman had had sexual relationships with female employees.
And the extortionist demanded $2 million to keep it quiet.
$2 million. And this wasn't just some random person.
No, it was Joe Haldeman, a producer for the CBS show 48 Hours.
A CBS employee? Someone who worked in the same building. The call was coming from inside the house.
Totally. So Letterman worked with the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. They set up a sting operation. And Letterman himself actually handed over a fake check to Haldeman.
Can you imagine the nerves? Handing over a fake check to a guy who knows your darkest secrets, knowing the police are listening in.
That is some serious cold nerves right there. Haldeman was arrested after trying to deposit the check. But for Letterman, the legal victory came with a heavy public cost. He had to go on air and admit to the affairs.
He apologized to his wife, Regina, and to his staff.
It was a really pivotal moment. The line between the private man and the public persona just completely collapsed. It raised serious questions about workplace ethics.
Right. And while his production company, Worldwide Pants, didn't strictly prohibit consensual relationships at the time, the power dynamic was undeniable. He was the boss.
It was a messy, complicated time. It stripped away that fun, wacky uncle vibe for a while. And speaking of Bessie, we have to mention the Sarah Palin controversy from around the same time.
The joke about Alex Rodriguez.
Right. Letterman made a joke implying A-Rod had knocked up Palin's daughter during a visit to New York for a Yankees game.
And the confusion was that Palin was there with her 14-year-old daughter, Willow. Letterman claimed he was referring to her 18-year-old daughter, Bristol, who was famously a pregnant teenager during the 2008 election.
But the optics of a 62-year-old man making a joke that could even possibly be interpreted as being about a 14-year-old.
It was disastrous. Palin called it disgusting. The National Organization for Women criticized his initial sort of jokey apology. He eventually had to issue a very serious, very specific apology to the daughters and the family.
It shows that even a giant like Letterman wasn't immune to crossing the line, or at least to the changing tides of what was considered acceptable humor.
True. But despite these scandals, he endured. He weathered the storms, and he stayed on the air until 2015.
The retirement. The end of an era. May 20, 2015.
And 13.76 million viewers tuned in for that finale.
And a send-off was just spectacular. You had 4 U.S. presidents, Bush Sr., Clinton, Bush Jr., and Obama, all on video, mimicking Gerald Ford, saying, "Our long national nightmare is over."
Self-deprecation until the very end. Even his goodbye was a joke about how awful he was to watch, and they had a beautiful full-circle moment.
Bill Murray,
who was his very first guest on Late Night back in 1982, was his final guest on The Late Show.
I love that symmetry. It just feels complete. So Dave rides off into the sunset. We expect him to just disappear to his ranch in Montana and fish for the rest of his life, but then he comes back. And he looks different.
The beard.
It's a serious beard. It's got its own zip code. He looks like a chaotic Santa Claus who has been living in the woods for a decade.
Or a Russian playwright. It signaled a major shift. He wasn't TV Dave anymore. He'd shed the suit. He had shed the daily shaving routine. He was free.
This is the Netflix era. My next guest needs no introduction.
And this is where we see the Sage Letterman emerge. The format shifted away from those short, punchy 7-minute segments to hour-long, deep conversations.
No commercials, no band interrupting, just talking.
He's interviewing Barack Obama for his first post-presidency interview. He's flying to Kyiv during a war to interview Volodymyr Zelensky in an active subway station.
That Zelensky interview was profound. It showed a level of gravitas that the Velcro suit Dave might have hidden, but you know it was always there. He's sitting there, 300 feet underground, hearing air raid sirens, talking about the nature of democracy.
It was a long way from predicting hail the size of canned ham.
A very long way. But he's also staying relevant with pop culture. He had a great interview with Billie Eilish.
And he didn't talk down to her. He was genuinely curious about her process, her life.
It is a remarkable second act. He's proving that his curiosity wasn't just a bit for television. He really is interested in people.
We should also mention he didn't just spend his retirement talking. He's a bit of a deerhead.
A huge deerhead. He's a co-owner of Rahal Letterman Lanigan Racing. His team has won the Indy 500 twice in 2004 with Buddy Rice and again in 2020 with Takuma Sato.
For a kid from Indianapolis, winning the Indy 500 has to be the ultimate dream.
Oh, for sure. And he has quite the car collection himself.
The sources mention 10 Ferraris, 8 Porsches, but the jewel in the crown for me, the car that explains David Letterman perfectly, is a 1995 Volvo station wagon.
A Volvo. That seems off-brand.
Not just any Volvo. It was built for him by Paul Newman.
Paul Newman, the actor.
Paul Newman, the actor and legendary racing enthusiast. He took a beige, boring, soccer mom Volvo station wagon and stuffed a 380-horsepower Ford racing engine inside it.
It's a sleeper car.
Exactly. It looks boring and unassuming on the outside, but if you step on the gas, it absolutely screams. That is the most David Letterman vehicle imaginable. Unassuming, cranky exterior, high-performance chaos underneath.
I want that car. And we can't forget his philanthropy, the foundation with the absolute best name in the history of charity.
The Letterman Foundation for Courtesy and Grooming.
I laugh every time I hear it. It sounds like a completely fake charity from a sketch.
It sounds like a joke, but they do very serious work. They donate millions to charities in Indiana, in Montana, and to big organizations like Doctors Without Borders and the American Cancer Society. He uses the irony of the name to deflect any praise for the good work he's doing.
So as we look back on this massive career, the 6,080 episodes, the beard, the lawsuits, the laughter, What is the legacy here? What did he leave behind?
I think you have to look at the Letterman tree. You just don't get Conan O'Brien without Letterman. Conan's absurdity, his love of the silly and the surreal, is a direct descendant.
Absolutely, the masturbating bear. That's pure Letterman DNA.
You don't get Stephen Colbert's satirical character without Dave's deep well of irony. Jimmy Kimmel, Jon Stewart, they all cite him as a primary influence.
Even the current generation. You look at YouTubers and streamers who do reaction content or deconstruct media, they are all doing a version of what Dave started. He was the original reactor.
He bridged the gap. Johnny Carson established the format of the late-night talk show. The desk, the couch, the monologue. David Letterman came along and he broke it. And in breaking it, he created the modern meta-comedy that we see everywhere today. He showed that you could be successful by refusing to fit the mold.
Even if it means getting fired from a college radio station for playing the wrong music.
Or making the Oscars incredibly awkward for everyone involved.
So here is a provocative thought to leave you with. Letterman spent 33 years mocking the artificial nature of television. He was the ironic host. He kept the world at arm's length. But now, on Netflix, he is doing these incredibly earnest, sincere, long-form interviews. Was the ironic Dave a character all along? Or did the medium of late-night TV just finally run out of space for the real David Letterman to emerge?
That's the question, isn't it? Perhaps the beard isn't a disguise. Maybe it's the first time we're truly seeing his face.
Something to think about. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.
See you next time.